When my husband's family offered me $1 million to sign my divorce papers, I did not cry. I did not shout. I smiled softly and picked up the pen, even though my heart was breaking in ways I had never felt before. At that moment, I already knew my marriage was over, not because of the money, but because the woman my husband loved was carrying his twins. Welcome to Auntie Rose Narrates. Before today's story of betrayal and self-discovery, please subscribe and hit like to help these stories be heard. Drop your city or country in the comments. It always warms my heart. Now let's begin. I remember the room being too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. My mother-in-law sat across from me, her hands folded tightly in her lap, unable to look into my eyes. My sister-in-law stood near the window, pretending to watch the street outside. My husband was not there. He could not face me. He was somewhere else, building a future with another woman while I was still his wife on paper. The envelope on the table looked heavy, as if it carried more than money inside. It carried the end of promises, the end of shared mornings, the end of a life I thought was mine. Inside it was a check worth more than I had ever held, meant to buy my silence and make me disappear quietly. They wanted no mess, no shame, no story told. Just my signature and my absence. I signed without hesitation. Not because I was weak, but because I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of waiting for honesty. Tired of loving someone who had already left me in his heart. 2 weeks later, I packed one suitcase and left the country without telling anyone where I was going. I wanted distance from the pain. I wanted space to breathe again. What none of them knew was this: while my husband was secretly planning his wedding to the woman carrying his twins, another truth was growing quietly inside me. And when he finally received the divorce papers he thought he controlled, they arrived with something else. Something he never expected. A truth that stopped his world completely. I want to take you back to who I was before everything broke. Before the envelopes, the signatures, and the quiet goodbyes. I was not always a woman carrying heavy silence. I was once someone who believed love, when cared for gently, could last forever. My name is Danielle Carter, and I am an African-American woman living in the United States. I was raised in a small home on the south side of Chicago, where mornings smelled like coffee and evenings sounded like soft voices. My parents did not believe in shouting. Even during disagreements, my mother would lower her voice and say, "Speak slowly. Pain listens better when you are calm." That lesson stayed with me my whole life. I grew up learning how to endure quietly, how to listen more than speak, how to love deeply without demanding too much in return. I did not dream of luxury or grand romance. I dreamed of peace, a home where I could breathe easily, a partner who would sit beside me in silence and still feel close. I met Marcus Carter when I was 26 years old. It was at a community event downtown. Nothing dramatic. He was standing near the back of the room, holding a paper cup of coffee, listening more than talking. When our eyes met, he smiled gently, not the kind of smile meant to impress, but the kind meant to comfort. We talked that night for a long time, about work, about family, about small dreams. He told me he wanted a simple life, a wife, a home, children someday. His voice was calm, and I trusted it. Our relationship grew slowly. We dated for 3 years before getting married. Marcus was patient. He opened doors. He remembered small details about me. He asked how my day went and waited for the answer. When he held my hand, it felt steady, like something I could lean on. When he introduced me to his family, I felt welcomed. His mother, Evelyn, hugged me tightly the first time we met. She was a proud woman, well-spoken, always neatly dressed. She told me I was beautiful, not just in how I looked, but in how I carried myself. I remember her saying, "You have quiet strength. That's rare." His father, Robert, was quieter. He nodded often, spoke little, but seemed kind. His sister, Lauren, was lively and warm. She laughed easily and treated me like a sister right away. Family dinners felt easy. I believed I had married into a family that would protect me. Marcus and I married in a small church ceremony. Nothing extravagant. Just close family, soft music, and promises whispered more than spoken. I remember standing beside him, feeling calm, certain. I believed I was stepping into a future built on trust. We bought a modest home together. A 2-bedroom place with a small kitchen and narrow backyard. It was not fancy, but it was ours. We painted the walls together. We argued gently over furniture placement. We built routines. Morning coffee, evening walks, Sunday dinners. For a while, life felt balanced. We both worked. We both came home tired. We sat together on the couch, sometimes talking, sometimes not. Silence did not scare me then. It felt safe. After a year, we started talking about children. At first, it was light conversation, someday, when the time feels right. But soon, someday turned into now, and now turned into waiting. Months passed, then years. Every time my hopes rose, they fell quietly. I learned how to hide disappointment behind a soft smile. Marcus said we had time. He said not to worry. He said things would happen naturally, but something in him began to change during those years. Slowly, almost invisibly, he stayed later at work. He answered messages more carefully. His phone stayed face down on the table. When I asked how his day went, his answers grew shorter. Not unkind, just distant. I told myself not to imagine problems that were not there. I reminded myself that marriage has seasons, that not every quiet moment means danger. His family remained kind. They invited us over often. They asked how we were doing. They asked about children gently, never pushing. I appreciated that. Still, there were moments that unsettled me. Whispered conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Concerned looks exchanged between his mother and sister. Subtle tension I could not name. I tried to talk to Marcus about it. I asked if everything was okay. He told me I was overthinking. He kissed my forehead and said he loved me. I wanted to believe him. I did not know then that love can exist alongside betrayal. That someone can care for you and still choose to hurt you. Looking back now, I see the signs clearly. But at the time, I was still standing inside the life I believed in. I was still cooking dinner for a man whose heart had already begun to wander. I was still setting a place at the table for a future that was quietly slipping away. At that stage, there was no anger in me. Only patience. Only hope. Only the belief that if I stayed calm and loving, everything would return to how it once was. I did not yet understand that silence, when stretched too long, can break even the strongest heart. The first real crack did not come with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly, the way most painful things do. It arrived in small moments that felt easy to ignore. Moments that whispered instead of screamed. Marcus began coming home later than usual. At first, it was once or twice a week. Then it became most nights. He would step through the door after 9, sometimes after 10, loosening his tie, saying nothing more than "long day." I would nod and slide his dinner plate into the microwave. I told myself this was normal. Work was demanding. Life was busy. Marriage was not always romantic. I believed patience was love, but the house felt different when he walked in. He carried his phone everywhere. To the bathroom. To the bedroom. Even when he stepped outside to take out the trash. When messages came in, he turned the screen away from me. Not dramatically, just enough. One night, while we were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, I asked softly, Is everything okay at work? He paused before answering. Just a second too long. Yeah, he said. Why? No reason, I replied. You just seem tired. He smiled faintly and reached for the remote. The conversation ended there. I noticed how little we talked now. Our words had become practical groceries, bills, schedules, the kind of conversations that keep a household running but do not feed the heart. I tried to bring warmth back in small ways. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked about his childhood stories again. I touched his arm when he passed by. Sometimes he responded. Sometimes he did not. There were nights I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing, wondering when the distance between us had grown so wide. I wanted to ask harder questions, but I was afraid of the answers. His family noticed changes too, though they did not speak openly. During Sunday dinners at Evelyn's house, conversations felt careful. His sister Lauren watched Marcus closely. His mother asked me how I was doing more often than before. One afternoon, while Marcus was outside helping his father with the car, Lauren pulled me aside into the kitchen. Are you okay? She asked quietly. I smiled. Of course. She studied my face as if trying to read something written beneath my skin. You know you can talk to me, right? Yes, I said. I know, but I did not talk. Not yet. Weeks passed. Then months. One evening, Marcus came home unusually cheerful. He hummed while washing his hands. He kissed my cheek quickly before sitting down. That small gesture made my heart lift, even though it shouldn't have. What's the occasion? I asked. Nothing, he said. Just a good day. I wanted to believe that smile belonged to me, that I was the reason his mood had softened. I did not know then that joy can come from places we are not invited into. Late that night, while he slept, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I was not looking for it. I did not plan to check, but the screen lit up, bright in the dark room. A name appeared. Tanya. No last name. Just a first name. Familiar enough to mean something. Hidden enough to mean danger. I turned away. My heart raced, but I stayed still. I told myself names mean nothing. People have friends. People have coworkers. Still, sleep did not come easily after that. The next morning, Marcus was distant again. He left early, barely finishing his coffee. I stood in the kitchen long after the door closed, holding a mug that had gone cold. I started noticing other things. New cologne. Different shirts. Small changes in routine. None of it was proof, but all of it was weight. I tried to talk to him again. One night after dinner, I sat across from him at the table. Marcus, I said gently, I feel like we're drifting. He sighed. You're imagining things. I'm not trying to accuse you, I replied. I just want us to talk. There's nothing to talk about, he said, standing up. I'm tired. That word followed him everywhere. Tired, too tired to explain. Too tired to listen. Too tired to notice my heart shrinking quietly. His mother invited me over alone one afternoon. Marcus said he had errands to run. I remember the way Evelyn looked at me when I arrived. Concerned. Heavy. We sat in the living room, sunlight coming through the curtains. She poured tea slowly, carefully. Marriage is not easy, she said, as if speaking to herself. No, I agreed. She hesitated, then asked, Marcus has been stressed, hasn't he? Yes, I said. He says work is demanding. She nodded, but her eyes did not match her agreement. There was something she was holding back. I felt it. I wanted to ask her directly if she knew something I did not, but I was raised not to confront elders. I stayed quiet. When I left that day, my chest felt tight. The truth began to surface in pieces, not all at once. First, it came through silence, then through avoidance, then through the way people looked at me with sympathy they thought I did not notice. The night everything changed, Lauren came to my house unannounced. It was late. Marcus was not home. She stood in the doorway, eyes red, hands shaking. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded. We sat on the couch. She did not speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Danielle," she said, "I don't know how to say this without hurting you." My heart already knew. It had been preparing for this moment for months. "Just tell me," I said. She swallowed hard. "Marcus is seeing someone." I did not respond. I stared at the wall across from us. The room felt distant, like I was underwater. "She's pregnant," Lauren continued. "They just found out." The word pregnant echoed in my mind, slow and cruel. "Is it serious?" I asked quietly. Lauren nodded. "Yes." I waited. My body knew there was more, and she hesitated. "It's twins." That was when the room finally collapsed around me. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt empty, like someone had turned me off from the inside. Lauren reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry," I nodded. "Thank you for telling me." That night, I sat alone in the dark for hours. I thought about all the months I blamed myself, all the patience I offered, all the quiet ways I tried to save something that was already gone. Marcus came home near midnight. I was sitting at the table when he walked in. "We need to talk," I said. He froze. Lauren had already told him she was coming over. I could see it in his face, the guilt, the fear, the relief that he no longer had to hide. "She told me," I said calmly. He sat down slowly. His shoulders slumped. "I didn't plan this," he said. I let out a soft laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. "Is she pregnant?" I asked. "Yes, with twins." He nodded. There was a long pause between us. "I loved you," I said. "I still care about you," he replied. Those words hurt more than anger would have. The days that followed were quiet, too quiet. Marcus moved his things into the guest room. His family started visiting more often. Whispered conversations filled the house. No one raised their voice. No one demanded explanations. Everything happened gently, as if softness could make betrayal less painful. Then came the meeting. Evelyn asked me to come over. She said the family wanted to talk. Marcus would not be there. I knew what that meant. They sat me down at the dining table. Evelyn, Robert, Lauren, all serious, all careful. "We want to handle this respectfully," Evelyn said. She slid an envelope across the table. Inside was the offer. $1 million. "For your signature," she said, "so everyone can move on peacefully." I looked at the envelope, then at their faces. People who once called me family. That was when I understood something clearly for the first time. They were not choosing peace. They were choosing control, and I was expected to disappear quietly. The moment I understood that my marriage was truly over did not happen when I learned about the twins. It did not happen when I saw the envelope of money. It happened later in a quiet room when I realized everyone had already decided my place in their future, and it did not include me. After the meeting with Marcus's family, I drove home slowly. I did not turn on the radio. I wanted to hear my own thoughts, even though they scared me. The streets looked the same, but I felt like I was seeing them from very far away. Like I was already leaving, even though my body was still there. When I walked into the house, Marcus was sitting in the living room. He stood up when he saw me. He looked nervous, like a child waiting to be punished. "They talked to you, didn't they?" he asked. "Yes," I said. He waited. I could tell he already knew the answer. "They want me to sign the divorce papers," I continued. "They offered me money." He did not ask how much. That silence told me everything. "I didn't ask them to do that," he said quickly. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I married. The man who once promised to protect me, But you didn't stop them, I said. He looked down. That was the moment something inside me went still. Not broken, just quiet. Like a door closing gently, but forever. I need time, I said. He nodded. Of course. But time was no longer something we shared. That night, I slept alone in the guest room. I stared at the ceiling and thought about all the ways I had tried to save us. All the nights I waited. All the excuses I made for him. I realized then that love should not require this much silence. The next morning, I woke early. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The envelope sat there, unopened. I had placed it there the night before, like something I needed to face in daylight. I opened it slowly. The number felt unreal. Too large. Too clean. As if money could wash away years of love, years of trying, years of pain. I did not feel insulted. I felt dismissed. They believed this would end things neatly, that I would take the money and disappear, grateful and quiet. They did not see my heart. They only saw a problem to be solved. Later that day, Evelyn came by alone. She asked if we could talk. We sat in the living room, the same room where she once told me I was family. We don't want this to be ugly, she said. Marcus has responsibilities now. Children on the way. I nodded. I understand. You're a good woman, she continued. You deserve a fresh start. Her words sounded kind, but they felt final. What about what I deserve from my marriage? I asked softly. She did not answer. That silence was louder than any confession. I realized then that this was not just Marcus's betrayal. It was a family decision, a choice made without me. They had already stepped into a future where I was a memory. That night, I signed the papers. I did not cry while signing. My hand was steady. My breathing was slow. I felt strangely calm, like someone watching their life from a distance. I left the envelope on the table. Marcus found it in the morning. He came into the guest room, holding the papers. You signed? He said. Double Q, yes. Just like that? Yes. He looked confused. Aren't you angry? I thought about that question for a long time. No, I said. Unclear. He did not understand what that meant. He would later. 2 weeks later, I packed one suitcase. I did not tell Marcus where I was going. I did not tell his family. I only left a short note. I need space to heal. Please do not look for me. I flew out of the country that night. I chose Ghana because it was quiet there. Because my grandmother used to tell me stories about strength and patience from that land. Because I needed to be somewhere that did not know me as someone's wife. The air felt different when I arrived. Slower, warmer. I stayed in a small guest house near the coast. I woke up early each morning and walked along the water. I let the sound of waves replace the noise in my head. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. Weeks passed. I stopped checking my phone. Messages came from Lauren, from Evelyn, from Marcus. I did not answer. One morning, I woke feeling strange, tired in a different way. I brushed it off at first, but the feeling stayed. A few days later, I went to a small clinic. I did not expect anything. I told myself stress does strange things to the body. The nurse came back holding a small piece of paper. You're pregnant, she said gently. The words did not land right away. Are you sure? I asked. She smiled. Very sure. I walked back to my room in silence. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Then I laughed. A soft, broken laugh that turned into tears. After all the years of waiting, after all the loss, life had chosen this moment. I placed my hand on my stomach and whispered, I'm here. That child became my anchor, my reason to stay strong, my proof that my story was not over. Back in the United States, Marcus was moving forward. He told people he was starting fresh. He spoke about responsibility, about doing the right thing. He did not speak about me. He began planning the wedding quietly. New invitations, new promises, a new woman standing where I once stood. He believed the past was settled. That belief shattered the day a courier arrived at his door. Inside the package was the final divorce decree, the one he assumed he controlled. Attached to it was a second envelope. Inside was my pregnancy test positive along with a short note. I signed so you could move on. Now you know I have two. When Marcus called me, his voice was shaking. Is this real? He asked. Yes, I said calmly. How could this happen? I paused. That's something you should sit with. He cried. Not loudly, just quietly. The way people cry when they finally understand what they lost. For the first time, he felt powerless. And for the first time, I felt free after Marcus called me that night. I sat very still for a long time. The phone rested in my hand, warm from his voice, but I did not feel the need to speak anymore. I had already said what mattered. For the first time since my marriage began to fall apart, I did not feel pulled in two directions. I felt settled, even though my life was still uncertain. I stayed in Ghana longer than anyone expected. Longer than I expected myself. At first it was because I needed distance. Then it became something else. It became healing. Each morning, I woke before the sun rose fully. The air was soft and warm. I would sit near the window and listen to the world waking up slowly. Roosters crowing in the distance, footsteps on dirt roads, quiet laughter drifting through the air. No one there knew my story. No one asked me what happened. I was not the wife who was left. I was simply a woman breathing again. Pregnancy changes how you think. It slows your thoughts. It brings your attention inward. I became more aware of my body, of my emotions, of the life growing inside me. I talked to my child softly, even when I was alone. I told them stories about strength, about patience, about how sometimes life takes something away to give you something deeper. There were moments when grief returned without warning. I would be folding clothes or washing dishes, and suddenly I would remember a laugh Marcus and I once shared, or a quiet evening when we sat side by side without speaking. Those memories did not stab me anymore. They simply passed through like clouds. I let them come and I let them go. I realized then that grief does not always mean you want someone back. Sometimes it only means you are honoring what once mattered. Thought often about the years I spent trying to be understanding, trying to be calm, trying to be enough. I saw myself clearly for the first time, not as weak, but as loyal, not as foolish, but as hopeful. I forgave that version of myself. She did the best she could with the love she had. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft colors, I felt my child move for the first time. It was small, almost like a flutter, but it stopped me completely. I placed my hand on my stomach and closed my eyes. In that moment, I knew I would never regret walking away. This life depended on my peace. Back in the United States, Marcus was struggling in ways he never showed before. I learned this not from him, but from silence, from the tone of his messages, from the pauses in his voice when we eventually spoke again. He had believed that once I signed the papers, everything would return to order, that his guilt would fade, that his choices would make sense with time. Instead, reality arrived slowly and heavily. Planning a wedding while carrying regret is not easy. Building a future while avoiding the past takes more energy than most people expect. I did not celebrate his discomfort. I did not wish him pain. I simply accepted that consequences do not always shout. Sometimes they sit quietly beside you and refuse to leave. When I returned to the United States months later, my body had changed. My heart had changed more. I moved into a small apartment in a city where no one recognized me. I bought secondhand furniture. I hung simple curtains. I built a space that felt safe. Lauren visited me there one afternoon. She stood in the doorway, unsure, like she did not know if she was welcome. I hugged her before she could speak. She cried into my shoulder. "I hate how everything happened," she said. "So do I replied. We sat together for hours, drinking tea, talking about ordinary things. She told me about work, about her fears, about how divided the family felt now. I listened, but I did not take responsibility for their discomfort. That was something I had finally learned to stop doing. When Marcus asked to meet me, I waited until I felt no tightness in my chest at the thought of seeing him. That was how I knew I was ready. We met in a quiet park, surrounded by trees just beginning to change color. He looked at my stomach before he looked at my face. "You look peaceful," he said. "I am." I answered. That seemed to surprise him. We spoke slowly, carefully. There was no need to rush. He told me he was sorry, not just for the affair, but for how he handled everything afterward. For letting his family take control. For choosing the easier path instead of the honest one. I listened. I did not interrupt. I did not defend myself. I did not explain my pain. I did not need to anymore. "I forgive you," I said finally, his eyes filled with tears. "I forgive you," I repeated, "because I don't want to carry this into my future." Forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It did not mean trusting again. It meant releasing myself from the weight of what he did. We spoke about the child calmly, about boundaries, about responsibility, about respect. I was clear. I would not allow confusion or chaos into my child's life. I would not compete with anyone. I would simply stand firm in truth. When we parted, I felt lighter. Not because everything was resolved, but because I had spoken from a place of strength, not fear. Motherhood arrived quietly. No dramatic moment. Just a steady shift in priorities. My days became filled with small tasks that mattered deeply. Feeding, holding, watching, loving. I learned how to be gentle without being fragile. How to be strong without being hard. There were nights I sat by the window, rocking my baby, thinking about how easily my life could have gone another way. How I could have stayed and slowly disappeared. How I could have taken the money and the silence and lost myself completely. Instead, I chose truth. Even when it scared me, Marcus's wedding happened without my presence. I heard about it later secondhand. I felt nothing sharp, only distance. That chapter was no longer mine to read. His family reached out over time. Some apologized sincerely. Some did not know how. I accepted what felt honest and let the rest go. Closure does not require everyone to understand you. It only requires you to understand yourself. As my child grew, I found myself laughing more, sleeping better, trusting my instincts again. I no longer doubted my worth when someone walked away. I no longer measured love by how much I endured. I learned that calm does not mean weak. Silence does not mean empty. And walking away does not mean you lost. I did not rebuild my life all at once. I rebuilt it slowly, brick by brick, day by day, with patience. Sometimes people ask me if I regret signing the papers so quickly. If I regret not fighting. I always smile when they ask that. I did fight. I fought for my dignity. I fought for my peace. I fought for the life growing inside me, and I won. Today, when I look back on everything that happened, it no longer feels sharp. It feels distant, like a road I once walked but do not need to return to. I can remember it clearly without feeling lost inside it. That is how I know healing has truly happened. There was a time when I thought survival meant holding on to promises, holding on to people, holding on to the idea of what my life was supposed to be. But now I understand something I did not understand back then. Survival sometimes means letting go with grace. I learned that dignity does not come from winning arguments or proving someone wrong. It comes from knowing who you are, even when others forget. It comes from choosing peace when chaos invites you in. It comes from walking away without turning bitter. Raising my child changed the way I see the world. I began to notice small miracles again. A quiet morning, a soft laugh, tiny hands reaching for mine. These moments taught me that life does not ask us to understand everything at once. It only asks us to stay open. I tell my child stories at night, not about pain, not about betrayal, but about courage, about listening to your inner voice, about how love should never make you feel small or invisible. I want my child to grow up knowing that walking away from harm is not weakness. It is wisdom. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I think about the woman I used to be. The woman who sat at that table, holding a pen, being offered $1 million for her silence. I do not judge her. I honor her. She chose herself in the only way she knew how at that moment. Money did not free me. Distance did not free me. Time did not free me. Understanding freed me. I understand now that not everyone who comes into your life is meant to stay. Some people arrive to teach you how strong you are. Others arrive to show you what you will no longer accept. Both have purpose. Marcus is part of my past. Not my pain anymore, just my past. I do not wish him harm. I do not wish him happiness either. I simply wish him awareness. That is enough. His family too became a lesson. They taught me that kindness without courage can still hurt people. That silence can be a choice. And that sometimes you must stop waiting for fairness and create your own peace. I no longer wait for apologies that may never come. I no longer replay conversations in my head. I no longer ask myself what I could have done differently. Those questions no longer serve me. What serves me now is presence. Being here fully with my child, with my breath, with my quiet mornings and honest nights. I rebuilt my life without rushing. I allowed myself to feel joy again without guilt. I allowed myself to trust slowly. I allowed myself to believe that love, when it returns, will feel safe, not heavy. And if love does not return, that is okay too. I have learned how to stand alone without feeling lonely. If you are listening to this story and you feel like you are standing at your own table, holding a pen, being asked to choose silence or truth, I want you to know something. You do not have to explain your choice to anyone. You do not have to be loud to be strong. You do not have to stay where you are not respected. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is smile, sign, stand up, and walk toward your own future. Not because you were defeated, but because you were done sacrificing yourself. I did not lose my marriage. I found my voice. I did not walk away empty-handed. I walked away full of clarity. And the life I live now may be quieter, but it is honest. It is mine, and it is enough. That is the lesson my story left me with. That is the peace I carry forward.